I'm very pleased to be granted this honorary degree as you are honored today.
In a stunning turn of events that is shaking the very foundations of the Catholic Church, Cardinal Luis has sparked an unprecedented debate that's left millions of faithful followers worldwide in disbelief. During what seemed like a routine discussion with U.S. priests in June, Cardinal Luis addressed mounting tensions over Pope Francis's revolutionary vision for church reform.
To remind you that Jesus prays for you.
As their clash subsides, deeper fears about Catholic identity and transformative change emerge. Could this confrontation signal the most significant transformation in modern Catholic history? Join us as we explore everything about the recent heated debates of these two giants in Christ.
May the God who is love bless the poor, the human family, the whole of creation.
Shocking revelation. Sources close to the Vatican whisper that Cardinal Tagle's challenge to Pope Francis runs deeper than anyone imagined. While the world watched their public clash unfold behind closed doors, an even more dramatic story was taking shape. In what Vatican insiders are calling the Summer of Discontent, 5 conservative cardinals dropped a theological bombshell by submitting their controversial Dubai in July 2023. These weren't just any questions, they struck at the heart of the Church's most sensitive issues: homosexuality and women's ordination. But here's where it gets really interesting. When Pope Francis responded on October 2, 2023, he didn't just answer those questions. He shattered decades of traditional approaches, just like his groundbreaking Amoris Laetitia from 2016. Statistics show that following this document, pastoral approaches to divorced Catholics increased by 40% in major dioceses worldwide. The tension between traditionalists and progressives has reached a fever pitch. Some church historians are even comparing this to the reforms of Vatican II, and we all know how that changed everything. To truly understand the magnitude of this clash, we need to look at Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle's remarkable journey. Born in Manila back in 1957, Cardinal Luis' rise through the church hierarchy reads like a spiritual success story. But what happened after his ordination in 1982 truly sets him apart. Being one of the youngest cardinals ever appointed in modern church history, his doctorate from the Catholic University of America wasn't just any academic achievement. It specifically focused on the very issues now shaking the Church's foundations. While everyone's focused on the theological debate, few know about the explosive accusations from Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte against Cardinal Luis. These allegations of political meddling were so serious that rumors of Vatican intervention spread like wildfire. Though fellow bishops quickly dismissed these claims, they add another layer to our unfolding drama. Now, let's talk about the other key players in this ecclesiastical showdown. Pope Francis, the first Latin American pope in history, and, get this, the first Jesuit ever to wear the papal crown. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, his journey from chemical technician to supreme pontiff is nothing short of extraordinary. Here's something that'll blow your mind. Since becoming pope in 2013, Pope Francis has made more structural changes to the Church than any pope in the last 60 years. And speaking of changes, his social media presence has revolutionized papal communication. With over 53 million Twitter followers across different language accounts, he's truly earned his nickname, the Digital Pope. But it's not all likes and retweets. The Church under Francis has faced unprecedented challenges, particularly regarding abuse cases. Recent studies show that his transparency initiatives have led to a 67% increase in reported cases, a statistic that both validates his approach and raises serious questions. In the midst of the Catholic Church's evolving dialogues, Pope Francis and Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle have emerged as distinct voices, each bringing their own interpretation to the Church's pressing challenges. Throughout 2023, While Pope Francis has addressed global issues through a broad, revolutionary lens, Cardinal Luis has maintained a more traditional, locally rooted approach to faith and practice. Pope Francis, in his recent encyclical Dilexit Nos, published on October 24th, reflected that one's heart could be seen as the essence of their being, as it distinguishes them, shapes their spiritual identity, and fosters communion with others. This document, though less publicized than his social encyclicals Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti, reveals the underlying tensions in the Church's approach to modernization. But that's not all. Cardinal Luis, pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, offered his perspective to Vatican News, his measured words revealing subtle differences in emphasis. While acknowledging the Pope's vision, Cardinal Luis's response highlighted the traditional devotional practices, particularly in his native Philippines.
And in my little way, I want to thank the Filipino people.
Suggesting a potential gap between global reform and local tradition. The contrast becomes more apparent in their approaches to synodality. Where Pope Francis pushes for structural changes and broader inclusion, Cardinal Luis emphasizes the importance of traditional, heart-to-heart relationships between pastors and the faithful. He observes that, without human relationships, purified by divine grace, missionary synodality risks being reduced to merely bureaucratic and legalistic proposals, an observation that could be interpreted as a gentle critique of certain reform initiatives. In the Philippines, where Cardinal Luis's influence runs deep, devotion to the Sacred Heart remains deeply traditional. This grassroots spirituality, with its emphasis on family and national identity, stands in interesting contrast to Francis's more globally oriented vision. Cardinal Luis explains that they beseech the heart of Jesus to rule and govern their families and nation with his mercy and love, emphasizing a more conservative approach to faith and governance. As the Church approaches the 2025 Jubilee, these differing perspectives, Francis's push for global reform and Cardinal Luis's emphasis on traditional devotion, create a dynamic tension in the Church's leadership. While both men speak of hope and renewal, their paths to achieving these goals reveal distinct visions for the Church's future. The publication of Dilexit Nos has sparked discussions about the balance between tradition and reform, with Cardinal Luis's response suggesting both diplomatic support and careful reservation. His reminder that we should constantly beg Jesus to transform our hearts might be read as both an affirmation of Francis's vision and a subtle call for more measured change. Throughout 2023, Cardinal Luis has been a consistent advocate for synodality within the Church, participating in various interviews and discussions regarding church reforms under Pope Francis. He has reinforced his support for initiatives promoting greater lay involvement and women's leadership within the Church, even while subtly hinting he might have approached these changes differently. This spirit of careful progress has characterized Cardinal Luis's approach to reform. Following the release of Pope Francis's encyclical on October 24, 2023, Cardinal Luis engaged deeply with its significance, particularly in relation to the upcoming Jubilee. As pro-prefect of the Dicastery for Evangelization, he emphasized placing love at the center of church life, portraying the Sacred Heart of Jesus as a source of hope and mercy for a broken world. In his interview with Vatican media, Cardinal Luis drew from his Filipino heritage, reflecting on the devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus that is deeply rooted in Philippine spirituality and his own youth. The timing of Dilexit Nos generated particular interest, coming after Francis's social doctrine encyclicals Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. When asked about this unexpected sequence, Cardinal Luis offered an insightful perspective, describing Pope Francis as a pope of surprises. He observed that while the announcement and publication of the encyclical were somewhat unexpected due to the focus on the Synod of Bishops, it was not entirely surprising that the Holy Father would release an encyclical on Jesus' love, symbolized in his Sacred Heart. For Cardinal Luis, the encyclical served as a bridge between Francis's earlier works, as he explained that it made the Christological foundation of the social encyclicals Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti more explicit. According to him, receiving the love of Jesus enables people to see others as brothers and sisters, and to act as caring, humble, and responsible stewards of their common home. He encouraged readers to revisit these earlier social encyclicals, suggesting they would find traces of dilexit nos already present within them. This connection to everyday spirituality resonated particularly in the Philippines, where devotion to the Sacred Heart remains deeply popular among the people of God. The tension. On July 21, 2024, Cardinal Luis served as Pope Francis's special envoy at the National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis. He emphasized the importance of viewing life through a lens of gift rather than achievement, and called for greater engagement with the Eucharist as a transformative experience. This message, while aligned with Catholic doctrine, subtly challenged some of Pope Francis's priorities by redirecting focus to traditional sacramental practice. Cardinal Luis's approach reflects his broader pattern of diplomatic yet principled leadership, particularly evident in his consistent advocacy against poverty and political corruption, where he has championed marginalized communities in the Philippines and globally, often facing potential backlash from powerful entities. Cardinal Luis Antonio Gokim Tagle of the Philippines, the recipient of the 2015-16 Ford Family Notre Dame Award for Human Development and Solidarity,
And together we walk for a better humanity.
has indeed been a steadfast advocate for the poor and vulnerable throughout his influential career in the Catholic Church. The 32nd Archbishop of Manila, he is both unpretentious and dynamic, whether commuting by bicycle or inspiring massive crowds with his exhortations. Born in 1957, Cardinal Luis grew up in a devout Catholic family and was ordained to the priesthood in 1982. After serving as a parish priest in Cavite Province for 3 years and teaching theology at several seminaries, he pursued further studies to deepen his theological understanding. His academic achievements would prove foundational to his future influence. In 1991, he earned a doctorate in sacred theology from the Catholic University of America, writing his dissertation on the development of episcopal collegiality during Vatican II. His dissertation director, Joseph Komonchak, praised him as one of the best students he had in over 40 years of teaching, suggesting that Cardinal Luis could have been an influential theologian had he not been appointed bishop. This scholarly foundation would later inform his pastoral approach, combining intellectual rigor with practical compassion. Recognition of his talents came swiftly. Pope John Paul II appointed Cardinal Luis a member of the Vatican's International Theological Commission in 1997, and in 2001 he was named Bishop of Imus, the Philippines. In his new role, he made it a point to live humbly and remain connected to those he served. A decade later, Pope Benedict XVI appointed him the 32nd Archbishop of Manila, and, in 2012, named him to the College of Cardinals, making him the second youngest member of that body. Since 2015, the Cardinal has served as the president of Caritas International, a confederation of more than 160 Catholic relief organizations that work with the most vulnerable, regardless of race or religion. Through this platform, he has advanced his mission to end poverty, promote justice, and restore dignity, particularly in response to the international migrant crisis. His influence extends through his service on the Presidential Committee of the Pontifical Council for the Family and the Pontifical Council for the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant Peoples. Despite his elevated position, the Cardinal maintains his characteristic humility. Known for his friendly demeanor and approachable nature, he prefers to be called by his nickname Chito instead of his full title. His media savvy has garnered him a large social media following, particularly on Facebook. where he shares videos of his homilies and public talks. With over 500,000 likes, Cardinal Luis effectively spreads his message of hope and forgiveness to people across the globe. Throughout his ministry, Cardinal Luis has been an outspoken advocate for issues affecting the poor and marginalized in the Philippines and around the world. His firm stance against the death penalty and political corruption, along with his vigorous efforts to address the refugee crisis and climate change, exemplifies his commitment to social justice. He has emphasized that the refugee issue is often reduced to statistics and abstractions, urging people to meet and engage with migrants. Highlighting the human lives at stake, he stressed that decisions must be rooted in respect for human dignity and the common good. Otherwise, the problem will persist, perpetuating conflicts that force people to flee. To understand the man who would later subtly challenge Pope Francis and spark debate within the Church, one must recognize Cardinal Luis's distinctive voice on controversial issues. He has been particularly vocal about his opposition to the death penalty, emphasizing the sanctity of life, a position that often places him at odds with prevailing governmental policies. When governments advocate for harsh criminal penalties, Cardinal Luis consistently speaks out against taking lives, returning to his foundational belief in life's sanctity.
New life, new visions. In the name of the many bishops.
It gets more interesting. The tension between traditional and progressive voices in the Church came to a head in October 2024, during a pivotal Vatican summit. There, Pope Francis warned against imposing personal agendas and defended his reform efforts, highlighting the ongoing discussions about the Church's direction amid diverse opinions among clergy, in which Cardinal Luis played a central role. On October 2nd, Pope Francis opened the final session of the closely watched summit on the future of Catholicism with a clear message. During his homily at the opening Mass of the Synod on synodality, he urged participants to avoid viewing their contributions as points to defend at all costs or agendas to impose. He warned that such an approach could lead to unproductive dialogues, where individuals push their own causes without truly listening to one another or to the voice of the Lord. The stakes were high for this gathering, where approximately 400 delegates from around the world convened in Rome to conclude a years-long consultation process Pope Francis had launched in 2021. This unprecedented initiative had invited Catholics worldwide to voice their thoughts on making the Church more inclusive and receptive to all its members. The response had been overwhelming. Millions of Catholics participated, and during the previous year's first session, delegates representing diverse viewpoints engaged in intense, sometimes heated discussions about contentious issues facing the Church. These topics ranged from clergy abuse and the role of women in ministry to the inclusion of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities within the Catholic Church, as well as questions of church authority. As the delegates reconvened, Pope Francis emphasized his desire to move beyond these contentious issues. Instead, he wanted the assembly to focus on how church structures could encourage greater participation and determine where legitimate diversity among local churches might exist on various issues and practices. At the opening Mass in St. Peter's Square, Francis emphasized the importance of listening and understanding the diverse voices, the ideas, expectations, and proposals within the Church. He stated that with the guidance of the Holy Spirit, this collective discernment is essential to hear God's voice speaking to the Church. Setting the tone for the gathering, delegates participated in a 2-day retreat led by Dominican Father Timothy Radcliffe, who used the metaphor of a fishing net to convey his message. He reflected on how the Church can embrace the diverse cultures of the world, asking how it might haul in the net filled with fish from every culture without breaking it. Radcliffe explained that a net is made up of empty spaces connected by ropes, spaces and bonds, emphasizing that both are essential for the net to fulfill its purpose. The diversity of Father Radcliffe was visible as ecumenical delegates from various Christian traditions and lay representatives from across the globe led the procession through St. Peter's Square, followed by priests, bishops, and cardinals. At the altar, they were greeted by Francis, who arrived via wheelchair. The 87-year-old pontiff, who has made synodality the cornerstone of his papacy and the primary vehicle for implementing church reforms, reminded those gathered under the partially sunny, overcast October sky that the issues before them were great and delicate, and required humility and careful listening in pursuit of harmony. In the midst of this push for unity, Cardinal Luis maintained his traditional approach while supporting the Pope, though there remained an undercurrent of tension, a subtle hint that beneath the surface things might be spiraling beyond anyone's control. In October 2024, Pope Francis ratified the final document from the Synod on synodality, marking a significant reform in church governance. The document proposes expanded roles for women, greater lay participation in decision-making, and calls for structural reforms within the Church. While not everyone agreed with these changes, dissenting voices found little ground to challenge the Pope's decision. Even Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, despite his subtle hints of disagreement,
You're young, but you have narrowed down your choices to only one.
ultimately accepted Pope Francis's direction. In a significant departure from previous synods, Pope Francis adopted the final document directly, foregoing the traditional apostolic exhortation in favor of immediate implementation. The 52-page document, approved by 355 synod members in attendance, outlines substantial proposals for church renewal, including expanded women's leadership roles and significant structural reforms. Though Cardinal Luis, known for his more traditionalist views, may have harbored reservations, he chose not to disrupt church unity and aligned with Pope Francis's vision. The Pope's commitment to renewal extended beyond administrative reforms to personal engagement with the faithful. On December 26, 2024, Pope Francis visited Rebibbia prison in Rome to inaugurate the Holy Year. In a powerful symbolic gesture, he opened a holy door there, emphasizing hope for inmates and underscoring the importance of prison ministry in his papacy. He also called for structural reforms in the Italian prison system to address overcrowding and inmate welfare. This visit followed his meaningful Christmas celebration the day before. On December 25, 2024, Pope Francis delivered his Christmas message, marking the beginning of the 2025 Holy Year. During his Urbi et Orbi address, he made an impassioned plea for peace amid global conflicts. The Holy Year is expected to draw 32 million pilgrims to Rome, focusing on themes of hope and reconciliation. The Pope's prison visit held special significance as he chose Rebibbia for the second Holy Door opening of the Jubilee. Rising from his wheelchair, Pope Francis knocked on the chapel door and crossed the threshold, echoing his earlier gesture at St. Peter's Basilica on Christmas Eve. Addressing the inmates, he explained that the first Holy Door he opened was at Christmas in St. Peter's, but he chose to open the second one in a prison. He expressed his hope that everyone, both inside and outside the prison, might open the doors of their hearts and recognize that hope does not disappoint. This dedication to prison ministry has been a cornerstone of his papacy since 2013, reflected in his numerous visits to Rebibbia and other prisons worldwide. His Christmas Day Urbi et Orbi address resonated with urgent calls for peace. Speaking from St. Peter's Basilica to thousands gathered below, he called on every individual and all nations to become pilgrims of hope, urging them to silence the sounds of arms and overcome divisions. He specifically appealed for negotiations between Ukraine and Russia to achieve a just and lasting peace, even as Russia carried out what it described as a massive strike on Ukrainian energy facilities that very Christmas Day. Here's the dark twist. Beneath these public developments, subtle tensions persist within the church hierarchy. While Cardinal Luis may hold different opinions on certain matters, his traditional and conservative outlook hasn't led to open conflict.
I work for Caritas.
The dynamic between these two church leaders reflects a deeper dialogue about modern Catholicism's direction. Though both champions change, they occasionally find themselves at odds over implementation methods. Cardinal Luis advocating for social media evangelization, while Francis pushes for structural reform. So what really caused the shockwaves in this historic debate? Was it the clash of these powerful personalities?
It is inspired by Pope Francis's Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti.
Or does it signal a deeper divide in the Church's future direction? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.